All right, good evening. We'll call the Wednesday, January 27th, 2021 meeting of the Brushy Creek Regional Utility Authority Board of Directors meeting to order. Monique, do you have a visual on all participants?
Yes, I do.
Awesome. Okay. So we'll go on to citizens communication, item number 3. Anybody wishing to address the board is able to do so. As of the moment, I am not aware that we have anybody that has registered to speak to the board. Is that correct?
Yes, I don't see anyone else online other than our panelists.
Okay. All right, just one more time. Nobody wishing to address the board? All right, hearing none, we'll move on. Item 4, approval of the minutes. 4A, consider approval of the BCRA meeting minutes for December 16th, 2020 and January 7th, 2021. Have a motion?
I'll make a motion. Second.
All right, that was a motion from Director Shaw and a second from Director Duffy. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Takes us to item number 5, staff reports. Consider an update from the general manager regarding the repair of the BCRUA 36-inch underwater pipeline Phase 1C and Phase 2 projects. Ms. Bondi.
Mr. President, I would recommend that we delay item 5 until after item 8A, since one of our board members would like to participate in the action items and has to leave early.
Okay, we can do that. So we'll hold off on item 5 at the moment, and we'll move on to item 6, presentations. 6A, consider a presentation regarding the FY 2019-2020 BCRUA financial audit and action approving the same. And I understand that Dan Wire is going to take that. Dan?
That is correct, Mr. President. And good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the board. My name is Daniel Wire. I am the accounting manager for the city of Cedar Park. And I'm here tonight for the presentation of BCRUA's 2020 fiscal year audit. To that end, I would like to introduce to you one of the partners of our Weaver audit firm, Rebecca Goldstein, and we'll turn it over to her. Rebecca?
Thank you, Dan. Appreciate it. Do I have access to share my screen? Can I do that?
I believe you do.
Okay, let me try to do that.
Okay, we can see it now, Rebecca.
Can you see it? The letter dated January 11th.
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay, great. Well, I appreciate you guys for having me. As Dan said, my name's Rebecca Goldstein. I'm partner with Weaver, your third-party financial auditor. And so I was just going to go over today the required communications to the board. We did complete the FY 2020 audit. It was a clean audit, so you got a clean opinion. So let me start there because sometimes I forget to say that. Before I forget also, I did just want to thank management, Dan and his team. We worked a lot with as far as getting the audit done, Karen as well. So it does take a lot of work to get everything we need to complete our audit and do our due diligence. So I do appreciate all of that. So what I will do is go through this letter. As I said, it's required communications. And then I know you all got a copy of the actual annual financial report. I will just note there was one change from the copy that you all got. We actually noticed, someone noticed that we had left a 2020 date on the audit report. So instead of a date of January 11th, 2021, it said 2020, which just goes to prove no matter how many eyes look at something, it takes a while for people to get used to the new year. So the copy you have is still the good copy. It was just that error was corrected. So I'll start with the letter. As far as our responsibility in relation to the financial statement audit, we do have an engagement letter with you guys that was signed on June 11th, 2020. And it is you did hire us to form and express an opinion on whether the financial statements have been prepared by management with your oversight are presented fairly in all material respects in accordance with GAAP. And so we do have a materiality level. We don't look at every single transaction. Trust me, you do not want us to do that, and neither do we. So there is a materiality level, but we give a reasonable but not absolute opinions, which means that we think based on the procedures that we did, we believe the financial statements are materially correct. And so our responsibility as prescribed by professional standard is to plan and perform our audit to obtain reasonable rather than absolute assurance. It also talks about in that second paragraph that we do look at controls. So we do walkthroughs of your processes, like how does the money come in? How is the money coming out? That type of thing. How are you, booking your construction in progress? How are you capitalizing your fixed assets and calculating depreciation? And so we look at all of those processes and the controls that go into those processes. We don't give an opinion on controls, but when we do get an understanding of how something comes from initiation to how it gets recorded in the financial statements, that gives us a good idea of what controls as far as segregation of duties and management review controls that are in place. And that can help us dictate how much work we do. In other words, how much risk we think there is in the numbers being correct as is, okay? We are responsible for communicating other significant matters to you all, which we didn't really have anything else here. Plan, scope, and timing of the audit. We did conduct the audit same as the way we communicated it in the engagement letter. The majority of the work is done right around Thanksgiving. And so we issued it a little after that, but you can see we usually come on site actually, and we did most of it remote this year. So I do appreciate everybody being flexible with that. But the timing is usually around the November 1st of December timeframe. We are independent of BCRUA, so we are required for that. So I'll tell you that. I'm scrolling down to page 2. With respect to non-audit, non-attest services, that just means that anything else that we do besides the audit, and really for you all, that's just preparing the report. So not all the time do the auditors actually prepare the AFR, but it's not uncommon that we do that as well. And so we just have to call that out and say it's not technically part of the audit, but what we the financial statements together with the numbers that's given to us by management we audited. And so in order for us to do that, we make sure that y'all have assigned an individual with suitable skills, knowledge, and experience to oversee the services. Basically that you're still taking responsibility for the financial statements themselves. We're just putting it together for you based on the audited numbers. Scrolling down the qualitative aspects of the entity's significant accounting policies. We did have one, if you'll note in the financial statements included in note 2, we did have a change in accounting policy. Actually, it's described in note 3 to the financial statements. So management elected to change their amortization of bond premiums and discounts from straight line to effective interest rate method. Effective interest rate is actually the preferred method. And so we'd had conversations with that in previous years. So management made that change this year, which is, as I said, really the preferred method. But a lot of times, if you look at it year to year, it's not materially different. So, but once that was put in place, you actually had a prior period adjustment of about 2.2 million that actually increased your prior net position. And that's just because when you implement a new accounting policy like that, typically you have to apply it retrospectively. So you have to look at if you had been applying it, if you had been applying this accounting policy the whole time, what would be the difference in your beginning net position? So again, nothing bad. It's just a footnote to say, hey, this has been a change in accounting policy. This is how it affected your financial statements. And we have a little emphasis of matter paragraph in our opinion. And then there's a footnote that explains that as well. As far as significant estimates, there's always estimates on financial statements. Really for y'all, the most sensitive accounting estimates are those affecting really the depreciable lives of your capital assets, because you have such a large amount of capital assets, if you will, right? Making sure that once something does come out of construction in progress and goes into a fixed asset, if you will, that depreciable life is determined, and that dictates really your depreciation expense for the year. And so of course we look at that and make sure that it's in line with industry standards, that there's not changes going on year to year. And then we also put in there the revenue true ups. So the revenue true ups happen based on, the the expenses, if you will, every year. And so there are revenue true ups that go into the revenue amounts as well. So those are considered estimates because the cities make payments based on a certain schedule. And then when you know what the final numbers are, there's true ups at the end. So again, we didn't find anything wrong with those. We're just required to point those out because they are estimates in the financial statements. And then if you look at page 3, it talks about financial statement disclosures. We just point out that the cash and cash equivalents and long-term debt are key financial notes, financial statement disclosures. We did not have any significant difficulties encountered during the audit. We do have some corrected misstatements. And we say misstatements, it's really adjustments that were made throughout the audit. So there's a schedule of those in the back. And really what that means is, the numbers aren't always perfect when we get them. And we did, work a lot this year and really scrub the CIP, fixed assets, and make sure we had everything right. Even if it was small and we said not material, we booked it. And so we really, Dan has a job of helping with that this year and really making sure that so there were some entries that were made, but again, they're called misstatements. It just means that there was adjustments that were made during the audit process. And if there was a lot of them and they were material, then that would indicate a significant deficiency or material weakness in control. You did not get anything like that. It just means that there was adjustments that were made throughout the audit. Okay. And then disagreements with management, did not have any of those. Representations requested from management. We do require management to sign what we call a management representation letter. That just means that at the end of the audit, they sign that and it says that we've given you everything that you've asked for. We didn't intentionally mislead you, anything like that. We're not aware of any other consultations with accountants. And let me scroll. Other significant findings or issues. Nothing there. Other information and documents, that just means that there's some supplemental schedules in the back that we don't give, we don't audit to that level of detail like the individual schedules of the city. So we put this paragraph in here just to say that there's different levels of assurance. We do tie those numbers out, if you will, but those are what other documents in the financial statements that don't have quite the level of assurance as the financial statements themselves. And they're in the other combining schedules in the back. Modification of auditor's report towards the end of the letter. Like I said, you did get a clean audit. That just, all this is doing is pointing out that if you look in the audit opinion in the front of the report, there is 2 emphasis of matter paragraphs. One of them talks about the change in accounting policy, so it points that out. And then one of them talks about economic dependency, and that just basically is regarding BCRUA's dependency on the cities of Cedar Park, Leander, and Round Rock. And that's throughout the financial statements that you'll read that. And then at the end here, this just, like I said, goes over the schedule of corrected misstatements. And so these are just entries that we made throughout the audit, if you will. I wasn't going to go over all of these in detail. But there is one in the back as well. It says uncorrected misstatements. This is just one that technically we could have booked in the prior year and we decided to book in the current year, but it did get booked. But again, none of these were considered material or any type of indication of a deficiency in internal control. So none of that. That is all of my required communications, but if y'all have any questions on the audit process or the financial statements themselves, I'll be happy to answer that.
Thank you, Rebecca. Board, any questions for Rebecca? Rebecca, is this first year? How many years has Weaver done our audit?
Karen might be able to speak. I've been on the audit for 2 years. I want to say it was a 3 or 5 year contract. And I think because of COVID, I think we were actually on our last year of our contract last year. And I know we were asked to extend it due to COVID this year. And so we did get our contract extended. So I want to say anywhere from 3 to 6 years, but I'd have to go back and look. I've been on the audit for 2 years.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions before we let Rebecca sign off? Ms. Bondi, any other questions, comments, concerns, thoughts?
I think BCRUA's accounting is somewhat complex because of the 3 cities and multiple projects, and some are being paid for with previous funds from loans that we'd taken for a while. And so I think that overall, the fact that our accounting has been able to get everything right, except maybe a few things that got changed at the very end, is phenomenal.
Yeah, and I will say a lot of the entries that are made that you see are really only entries that have to be made once a year at year end when we come in. So some of the entries are expected, and we understand that we need to help you guys with some of those, like adjusting the investments get adjusted once a year and things like that. There's things that only get booked once a year for the annual financial statements. So it's not unusual to have entries, if you will. It's just a matter of how many do you have and how material are there. And again, it wasn't an indication of anything, any kind of control gaps with management. We didn't feel like that at all.
Dan, did you want to add anything?
I was going to ask with regards to the dependency comment. I mean, there's no other way to get away from that dependency comment, would there?
Dependency,
You talked about,
what exactly?
Yeah, you made the comment that the BCRA was dependent on the 3 cities, but I mean, that will never go away.
Yeah, it's not a bad thing, right? I mean, that's how you operate. That is your revenue stream. It's just required to be disclosed, right? But anybody reading the financials knows that's, that you are a specific entity that was created, and these 3 cities are benefiting, and this is the relationship. And so, no.
Okay. All right. Well, if there are no further questions, and I don't see anybody raising a hand, I think we are ready. I will entertain a motion to approve the presentation.
Motion.
Second.
Motion from Director Shaw, second by Director Duffy. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Rebecca.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
All right, then we will move on to item 7. And 7A is consider a resolution approving the quarterly investment report for October 1, 2020 through December 31st, 2020. Ms. Bondi?
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. We have today with us Lori Langford. She's the Assistant Financial Director for the City of Round Rock, and she is going to review the quarterly investment report for you. So let me turn it over to Lori.
Hi, good evening. This report was prepared by our investment advisors, Patterson and Associates, and it's prepared in accordance with Public Fund Investment Act and also our adopted investment policy. Currently, the BCRUA has about $27.4 million portfolio. And for the quarter, we had an average yield of about 13 basis points. So that's 0.13%. So it's not, it's just the way the world is right now. So, but it is above the Fed funds rate at the moment. Investment income for the quarter was about $10,000. Most of our funds right now are in a liquid state. They're a Techstar and in a money market due to the cash needs of the authority with the expansion and things like that. So, and then this report has been reviewed by all of the investment advisors. And if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
All right, any questions for Lori? All right. Seeing none, we need a resolution on that.
Yeah. Motion to approve the resolution.
I'll entertain a motion to approve resolution for 7A.
So moved.
Second.
We have a first by Director Duffy, second by Director Shaw. All in favor, say aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
Resolution carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lori. All right, moving on to 7B. Consider a resolution approving change order number 4 with Excel Construction Services LLC for the BCRUA Phase 1C water treatment plant expansion. Ms. Bondi.
Thank you, Mr. President. Well, as Phase 1C water treatment plant and raw water intake expansion are now substantially complete, this change order is for cleanup items and finishing up the project. It includes credits plus additional items that BCRUA added, asked the contractor to address. The various items that are included in this change order are listed in your background information sheet. The total amount for the collectively for the 7 items is a change order of $18,253. I'm happy to address these items individually or answer any questions, and I will be giving a presentation on Phase 1C later in the agenda.
Any questions, board?
No question.
All right. Seeing none, we'll entertain a motion to approve item 7B.
So moved.
Second.
First by Director Duffy, second by Director Shaw. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. So now we will move on back to item 5. The staff report. So 5A, consider an update from the general manager regarding the repair of the BCRUA 36-inch underwater pipeline, Phase 1C and Phase 2 projects. Ms. Bondi.
Thank you, Mr. President. It has been a while since we have given you an update on some of our major projects going on. So I will be presenting an overview of the Phase 1C project, and Aaron Archer from Walker Partners will be presenting a Phase 2 overview. But first, we wanted to give you an update on our 36-inch raw water line repair project that we had the emergency board meeting for. We have since then gotten the contractor under contract. The materials have been delivered. We've completed the site reconnaissance. We have equipment and barges in place and secured. We've developed a plan to complete the repair. The hole that was developed when the pipe broke has now been lined and grouted. And we've inspected 3 joints of pipe each way and found that there are really only 2 that are addressed in the immediate vicinity, although we will, before we're complete, inspect the entire pipeline from end to end. We did find that a couple of supports on one end of it, one end of the broken section had settled, and we will be repairing that as after we get the line in service. So we have now, the contractor has now cut the pipes on either end of the break and removed them and delivered them to our water treatment plant where we could inspect them. We did find something surprising, and that is that the pipe break was a clean break. So the pipe did not pull apart. It actually broke along a plane that seemed to be in the weakest area of the pipe. So we are having representatives of the pipe manufacturer visit our site tomorrow and give us their assessment of whatever they are able to ascertain from looking at the break. So we will begin the forensics of what happened now that we have that information. So we, like I said, the pipe, it was a pretty big effort to remove the pipe, the way the pipe broke, and the structural support for the pipe had fallen over. The contractor had to be very careful in terms of stabilizing that pipe. And so that took a while to figure out how best to do it, but they were able to do that successfully. They are working 6 days a week with 6-person crews, except on days where there's been high winds, but that hasn't been very many days that they haven't been able to work. So next, they are cleaning the bottom of where they're going to put the forms that will support the 2 new pipe segments that they're going to put in place. Then they will set anchors for the supports, the footings that will be under the pipe. Then once they have the anchors set, and then they'll put forms in place, but they're not going to fill those forms with concrete until after they set the pipe. So that they will set the pipe and then pour the footings, and that is all planned to be completed in mid-February. And then they will test the pipe the week of February 23rd is the plan. Of course, this is weather permitting, but they have been able to stay on schedule. So we are rapidly working towards having this all back and up in operation by the end of February. I'd be happy to answer any questions, or Aaron can chime in with any particular engineering details you might like to hear.
So outside of identifying the break, I mean, is it as good as it can be? I mean,
As far as it's mainly affecting just 2 pieces of pipe, and we did order spare pipe in case we found the problem was more extensive, but it is good news to find out that it's limited to this one area.
And did you get any indication from the manufacturer, like that with them coming out, have they experienced this elsewhere, or were they just as kind of surprised as us, or?
Yeah, they're coming out tomorrow, but they, Aaron, you can help me here, but the communication back to me has been they are not used to seeing this situation.
Yeah, so far from the photographs we've been able to share from our underwater recon, they're relatively surprised to see a break in the location that we've identified. And I'll be out there tomorrow when they come by to go look at those pipe ends. So they haven't started to speculate on what caused that break. The break was on the transitional bell end of the pipe, which is one of the stronger portions of the pipe. And so I don't know yet what they're going to point to, and we're going to wait to kind of get their initial response before we figure out our next steps in terms of forensics, if we want to go further down that road.
Aaron, who's the manufacturer?
Clow.
Wow. Okay.
And
So
this was it was a section of, it was a restrained joint that failed. The underwater recon actually ended up being a mixed bag of information. As they did more recon, we found that there's more pipe supports that had settled, and there's a certain amount of work that goes into dealing with that. The good news was that the break was on a restrained joint, and there was a ball joint upstream and downstream of that restrained joint, so that makes reassembling that pipe with the closure piece much easier than it would have been. And so they'll be able to button up the pipe more easily, but they're going to have to spend more time underwater trying to get additional support.
But it basically failed in shear.
It did.
Wow. Ductile iron and shear. Interesting.
Very clean break right across the face.
all right, any other questions, comments? All right. Well, then that will conclude item 5. There's no motion on that, right? Just a presentation. Okay. All right, so that's going to take us into item number 8, which is executive session. I'm going to introduce it, and then just as we did last time, we're going to have to leave this meeting. You should have an email in your file from Sarah White with a second link for executive session, and then we'll get back together and go at that point. So
Renee, prior to that, I just want to ask you, I have a presentation on 1C, and Aaron has a presentation on phase 2. Would you like to do those prior to going
I'm
in?
sorry. Did I miss that?
It was just all part of the same.
I'm sorry. Then yes, my
Okay.
apologies. So
I wasn't clear.
proceed.
Okay, well, I'm going to go ahead and start with a presentation. It's fairly short on phase 1C since we haven't really talked about that for a while. So I'm going to
Okay.
share my screen and show you a slideshow. If you just give me a minute here. Let me put this in. All right, so it has been quite a while since we've talked about phase 1C, except when I've been bringing you various change orders to the project. So let me start by saying that I want to share with you what the phases are of phase 1 and how they came about. So I've listed here under the phase 1 expansion plan, we have phase 1A, which was started in construction in 2009, and that was the brand new the interim floating intake structure, the raw water pipeline, and the treatment plant with an initial capacity of 17 million gallons per day. Also was a treated water transmission pipeline along West New Hope Road. And I will be bringing some discussion about New Hope Road to you in the next couple months because we are seeing some settlement there. And then phase 1B, which occurred around 2017, was re-rating the capacity of the treatment facilities to 22.6 million gallons per day. And basically what that is with some engineering analysis and testing of the plant, it was determined that the phase 1A facilities that were designed for 17 MGD actually were able to treat 22.6 MGD. So that was approved by the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality. So that increased our capacity without any significant investment. And then phase C is what we are just finishing up now. It was started in 2018 in terms of construction, and that expanded the intake and the treatment facilities to 32.5 MGD. In fact, the floating intake has a higher capacity than that. And then phase 1D is the next one. That is going to further expand the water treatment plant to 42 MGD. It was planned initially to occur at around year 2024, but with Leander's increased demands faster than what was planned initially, we're talking about accelerating that. And if we do, we'll certainly bring that to you soon. And then phase 2 that Aaron will present on later, that begins with the deep water intake and the plant expansions after that. So you may have read in the audit these references, and then there's subcategories of phase 2 as well, but just for those of you who weren't here when all this was planned, just wanted to let you know what we had in mind. And so it's a great milestone that we are now completing phase 1C. So I wanted to show you some photos. We are now substantially complete with phase 1C. And so that means that the plant and the raw water intake expansion can be put into service. And while there's some minor items being completed before final completion. So if you look at the photo on the left, the 2 treatment trains on the right that have water in them, those are the existing treatment that was built in phase 1A. And then the new one on the left there that's under construction, that is phase 1C. And then you can see there's room on the left of that for phase 1D. It was all planned from the beginning, and now as we're adding increments, it's all pretty straightforward. And if you look on the right, that's a photo of the finished settlement basin for 1C that matches all the other trains that were there. And then here's a photo of our raw water intake expansion. On the far left is Cedar Park's barge, or their raw water intake, and it's pumping up to the water treatment plant, their water treatment plant you can see in the background. And then in the middle is BCRUA's barge that was built in phase 1A. You can see it's bigger, and a lot of that is because it has to pump all the way up the hill, and has greater capacity. And then on the right side, that mirrors the middle one, that is our new barge that we've just completed. I wanted to give you a cost summary. Can you see that, or do I have these?
We can see it.
Okay, so the engineer's opinion of probable construction cost when this was being planned was a total of about 15.9 million for the two projects. Ultimately, BCRUA borrowed 15.3 million from Texas Water Development Board and SWIFT funds for the project. And then when the project was bid, it came in at 13.63 million. And partly the economic conditions for going out to bid at that point were very favorable. And our contractor, Excel Construction, actually came in about $1 million under the next lowest bidder. So our estimated final cost, and this is pretty close, we'll just have a couple of minor items to tweak at the very end, came in at 13.97 million. And most of the increase in costs over the original contract price were all the items that we asked the contractor to do, repairs that had come up during the 2 years that they were working on the project. If not for us adding those repair projects in, then the final cost would have been less than the original contract price. So the good news is the contractor stayed under the budget that had originally been bid. That's really all I had. If anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. When when we're all vaccinated, we'd love to have you out for a tour of the new facility.
So Karen, is 42 MGD the maximum? That's where it's going to be?
And Aaron, you could chime in here. The plant actually is designed to be expanded up to like about 104 MGD. Is that right, Aaron?
Yes, the ultimate capacity is 105.8 MGD. So there's a number of additional future expansions that will keep occurring all the way out till about 2060. The phase 1D 42 MGD is just the treatment capacity we'll get from the completed first treatment structure out there. You saw in that photograph that Karen put up, they were completing under phase 1C the third of 4 treatment trains at the plant. So when they bring on 1D, the treatment capacity at the plant will be 42 MGD. Now, if 1D is completed before phase 2 is brought online, we won't have enough raw water pumping capacity to make all the way up to 42 MGD. It'll be something less than that, probably around the 38 to 40 MGD range. But once phase 2 comes online, then you can realize that that 42 MGD capacity from phase 1D.
Well, that's a lot of room for growth.
There's a lot of additional expansions at that plant over time. That's correct.
Well, and all the 3 cities seem to be growing like weeds, so it's good to have this foresight that the 3 cities had coming together and planning for this large expansion that we're going to have over time here. So let me move into Aaron's phase 2 presentation, and then we'll open it up for questions on either phase 1C or phase 2. Aaron, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen unless you
Okay.
have some
No, that would be great.
Okay, happy to do that. Let me share, and then phase 2, there we go. Let me tee this up. All right, here we go.
All right, thank you, Karen. Well, it's been a while since I've had a chance to give you an update on phase 2, and there has been a lot happening on design of phase 2. So I'm going to just focus on some major highlights. It's a pretty brief presentation, but I'm happy to answer questions if there are any at the end. Karen, can you go to the next slide? So an update on final design. We did achieve a major milestone in the project at the beginning of the month by wrapping up the 90% design submittal. We're still working with our cost estimating team on the cost estimate, which should be prepared about mid-February. But in terms of design, we have started pivoting over to completing the 100% design submittal, which will wrap up in summer of 2021. On the slide here, I included a few updates to the intake facility renderings that were completed at 60% design phase, just to show you guys a little bit about how the project is developing. On the left, you can see the maintenance building, which will provide chemical treatment for the raw water delivery system to make sure we keep a handle on zebra mussels. And in the lake, blown up in the middle photograph, you can see a rendering of the upper intake structure. As you guys may recall, there's 2 separate lake taps or vertical riser pipes in the lake. Each riser pipe has 2 different withdrawal levels to allow us to withdraw water from 4 different elevations in the lake. The middle rendering represents average lake level for Lake Travis, which is about 667 feet. And at that condition, we have a buoy line, a buoy perimeter erected around that upper intake tower per agreements with LCRA. And then as you look to the right, when the lake begins to drop considerably, and in this photograph, we've rendered the intakes at a lake elevation of 627 feet. So that's very low at this point. We're talking about being close to about 50 to 60 feet low. What happens when the lake starts to fall that low is the upper intake begins to become exposed in the dry, and we start taking water from the lower intake structure. And per negotiations with LCRA for our buoy permit, we'll erect a new buoy perimeter around the lower intake structure to make sure that it stays protected, protecting both the intake and recreational lake users. Karen, can you go to the next slide? These renderings show the pump station facility, which is on Lime Creek Road, adjacent to Cedar Park's water treatment plant. And in the left is a perspective from Lime Creek Road, and the right is the perspective from the lake. And the work on the pump station, there's been a considerable amount of detail included in our design on what's going on within the pump station building. The renderings themselves don't look significantly different from what I showed you guys at the last presentation around the May timeframe. What does look different is you'll notice that there's a lot of additional trees downhill from the pump station building, which was an agreement that we negotiated with City of Austin as we were going through the variance approval process with them. We had a considerable number of variances on our site development, and that was part of a negotiated agreement with City of Austin that we would add some additional trees downhill from the pump station. Next slide. So one item that we have spent a lot of time on since the last time we talked is our agency coordination and permitting. And a lot has happened there, so I wanted to go through some of the major entities that we're coordinating with and give you a status update. The first on the list is the Army Corps of Engineers working with their Fort Worth District Office. We have received authorization for Nationwide Permit 39. And I really want to applaud all the folks that worked on that. It was a major effort to work through coordination with the Army Corps of Engineers to get that completed, going through a pretty complicated process that they outlined. And we did get that authorization. And so we have that feather in our cap at this point. Next bullet. City of Austin as well. We've had a lot of meetings with the City of Austin over the last 2 months. We had a large number of variances that needed to be approved by their environmental commission. And we did obtain unanimous approval for those variances, and then went through a second commission, their zoning and planning commission, and also received unanimous approval on that. And so at this point, we're just clearing up a few minor comments, but for the most part, we've jumped over the major hurdles with the city of Austin. Travis County is a major ongoing coordination effort. We have submitted a site development and right-of-way permit applications to them and have gone through a couple rounds of comment response at this point. But I think that over the next 2 months, Travis County is going to be a pretty major effort. We'll put a lot of time into trying to get through the rest of the permitting process with them. LCRA, we have obtained our buoy permit through coordination with their team, and we've also submitted to them a fill and dredge permit application, and we will submit to them shortly, within the next few weeks, a general utility permit application. But we've been keeping in touch with LCRA on this project over the years, going all the way back through preliminary design, and so I know their staff have a really good feel for where we are on the project design. Village of Valente, we are continuing to work with them, negotiating the ILA, which has included some parallel permitting efforts with them. And so that's a conversation that we're having with them nearly on a daily basis. Balcones Canyonland Preserve, we needed to get approvals from them to do clearing of the pump station site and also to do some clearing for the PEC temporary power project, which is the project that will bring power to the pump station for the contractor once they've mobilized. It also removes a bunch of existing utilities off that site. And we have received our approvals from them, and we are waiting for this week to get executed certificates, which will allow that clearing to commence so that it's all wrapped up by March 1st. The PEC team that is working on those contracts has told me that the tree clearing contractor is ready to go and should have no problem having that complete by March 1st. Texas Commission on Environmental Quality, we will be submitting our 100% design to them in summer of this year. So that's a forthcoming item. And then lastly, the Water Development Board will also be submitting to them around the same time as TCEQ for plan review. And we're working right now on funding applications for SWIFT funding. And one item that I did not include on here, but I wanted to give you an update on is our coordination with the residents on North Rim that are along the southern route that was selected some time ago. We had made a prior commitment to them that we would circle back at the beginning of the year and do some additional coordination with them and with PEC. And so that is an item that we're working on right now to figure out how best to coordinate with that group, given that we're not likely to be doing any large group meetings at this time. And I know that we've had a number of conversations with PEC trying to get some things calendared for that. Next slide. So I wanted to give you guys a feel for what's going to be occurring as we work through the remainder of design phase and beyond. So this is a relatively simplistic schedule, but it gives you an idea of kind of how the phases link together. We'll wrap up final design around the early fall, which includes some time for permitting with Water Development Board and TCEQ. We do owe the Texas Water Development Board SWIFT abridged application on February 1st, which is next week. And the abridged application for them is just an initial application that gets you into their evaluation process so that they can look at your funding request, look at your project, and then put that in their financial model and score it and rank it. And the top ranked proposers then get invited to submit a final application, which happens in the April to May timeframe typically, but that's not a published date. It's just what it's been in the past. And then the loans close for SWIFT funds usually around October or November. We're showing moving into advertisement and bidding for phase 2, starting in the fall of this year, going into spring of next year. given the project size, we want to make sure the contractors have ample times to prepare their numbers and to ask questions on that project. And then after selecting a contractor, there's typically a period of a month or two required to go through the award process with BCRUA and the cities. The PEC temporary power project has in some ways already started. PEC has started ordering long lead time poles and other engineered items already. And we're hopeful that tree clearing begins next week. They'll then continue to complete that project through a series of work orders, having it wrapped up in the first quarter of next year prior to a contractor needing to get on the site. And then phase 2 construction, I continue to represent that as about a 5-year duration, giving consistent feedback from contractors indicating that it's a 4.5 to 5-year duration project, which puts startup in early 2027 before summer 2027 demands hit. And then following up on what Karen has said, phase 1D right now is a schedule that we're trying to dial in based on updated demand projections. We had previously shown that coming online is the same time as phase 2, but now we're looking at accelerating that forward. And how early we accelerate that forward is a discussion that we're in the middle of right now. So we'll have some more clarity on that in the near future. Next slide. So with that, if you guys have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
And Aaron, let me chime in that for the abridged application, we have the 60% design cost, cost estimate that we're using as a basis for the application since it's due February 1st. Aaron will have the 90% estimates February timeframe. So once we, so we're going to put a healthy contingency on the application for the amount of loan that we might need. But once we get feedback from the Water Development Board to see if we're eligible, then we will bring that back to you in the April timeframe to determine what amount of loan that we want to ask for in the final application at that time.
Very good. That's a lot of coordination of different groups and people, Aaron. So I guess that's kept you pretty busy.
We've been busy.
So I guess that check mark list or whatever, I mean, that's the bulk of the traps you have to run, and now it's just a matter of putting it all together and presenting it. Is that fair to say?
That's a fair statement. We need to wrap up our contract documents. So there's some items we need to address both from stakeholders and some finishing details on our design. And then the two agencies that we are putting the most emphasis on getting our final permits are the Village of Valente and Travis County. And so we'll work through those over the next couple of months.
And if I remember correctly, the 2027 date is important because when you kind of look at the demand needs of the cities, that's kind of when we think that we kind of hit that point that we need to have something in place. Is that right?
That's correct. That's the date that we've been carrying based on the most recent collective demand projections from the city of when we need to have that system online to replace the floating intake. And so you can see on the schedule that I had shown you guys, at this point, there's not a lot of float left in that schedule. We're talking about wrapping up design, going straight into advertisement and bidding, and then into construction. There's really no fluff or delay periods incorporated in that to get it online at that time in 2027.
So this is going to be a significant project. So do you anticipate we'll get people from outside the area, outside the state, bidding on a project like this?
Absolutely. We've done a great deal of contractor outreach and done a number of articles in various publications, making sure that contractors, national and international contractors, are aware of the project. And many of them have voiced significant interest in pursuing it. At the end of the day, it's a major effort to put together a bid for a project this size. I think it's going to depend on what other projects are on their books when we advertise, but there is significant interest in the contracting community.
Well, good job, sir. Any other questions for Aaron or Ms. Bondi about their presentations? Well, thank you, Aaron. All right, so if I don't mess up anymore, we are now going to go and we're going to talk about trying to get into executive session. So what I said earlier about having to exit this phone call, exit this conference, and then we'll reconvene under executive session. So I'll go ahead and read that. Item 8, consider an executive session as authorized by section 551.071 of the government code related to the consultation with the board attorneys regarding the proposed interlocal agreement with the village of Valente. So we will adjourn to executive session. I'm showing 6:56. All right, so look for Sarah White's email, drop out of this one, and then we'll get together in a few minutes. Thank you. Wow, you came back.
Yeah, we weren't going to leave you out there in the cold.
All right, so we will reconvene and we are adjourned.
Wait a minute.
Oh, hold on.
Wait a minute, Jeff.
No, don't leave. Before we adjourn, we're out of it. We will reconvene the meeting and then we'll just go by the images on the screen for item 9, closing comments regarding items of community interest. Director Baker.
No, nothing for me. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Director Anderson.
Nothing from me either. Thank you.
All right. Director Duffy.
No, thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Okay. I appreciate everybody's hard work on this, and thank you, Karen, for all your work on this. Aaron, all your work, and Michael, thank you for everything you do. All right, we are adjourned.
All right. Have a nice evening, everybody. Good to see you.
Thanks, you too.
Bye-bye.
Bye.